In the dim glow of a chandelier, a widow in pristine white sways across a crowded ballroom, her smile hiding secrets sharper than a dagger. But when the music stops and a body falls, deception begins its deadly dance. Welcome to The Widow in White, Dance of Deception, a Hercule Poirot mystery that will twist your expectations. Grab a cup of tea, take a seat, and settle in for the intrigue. If you're hooked already, hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us. Chapter 1. The Invitation to Shadowbrook Manor. The rain lashed against the windows of the Orient Express as it hurtled through the English countryside, a relentless drumbeat that matched the rhythm of Hercule Poirot's thoughts. The little Belgian detective, with his impeccably waxed moustache and piercing grey eyes, sat in his compartment, sipping a tisane and perusing a letter that had arrived just that morning. It was an invitation, elegantly scripted on heavy cream paper, bearing the seal of Shadowbrook Manor. "My dear Monsieur Poirot," it read, "your reputation as the solver of impossible puzzles precedes you. I humbly request your presence at my estate for a weekend gathering. There are matters of great delicacy afoot, and I fear only your little grey cells can unravel them. Yours in anticipation, Lady Evelyn Harrington." Poirot folded the letter neatly, his mind already whirring like the train's wheels. Lady Harrington was no stranger to scandal. Her late husband, Lord Reginald Harrington, had been a shipping magnate whose fortune was built on whispers of smuggling and shady deals across the colonies. His death 6 months prior, officially a hunting accident, had left her a widow of immense wealth, clad eternally in white as a symbol of her undying grief, or so the society pages claimed. Poirot had his doubts. Grief, in his experience, rarely paraded itself so theatrically. He adjusted his lapel pin, a silver acorn that caught the light, and murmured to himself, but what game is this widow playing? Poirot shall see." As the train pulled into the rural station of Eldridge Hollow, a sleek black Rolls-Royce awaited, its chauffeur a stoic man named Graves with a face like weathered stone. The drive to Shadowbrook Manor wound through fog-shrouded lanes, past ancient oaks that clawed at the sky. The manor itself loomed like a Gothic sentinel, its towers piercing the twilight, ivy creeping over stone walls that whispered of old secrets. Poirot alighted, his patent leather shoes crunching on the gravel, and was greeted at the grand oak doors by Lady Harrington herself. She was a vision in white silk, her gown flowing like a spectre, her dark hair pinned with pearls, and her eyes, those eyes, holding a mix of warmth and something sharper, like hidden thorns. "Monsieur Poirot, how delightful you've come," she said, her voice a melodious lilt with a hint of urgency. She extended a gloved hand, which he kissed with continental flair. "The other guests are arriving shortly. I do hope you'll find our little soirée enlightening." As she led him into the opulent foyer, adorned with crystal chandeliers and portraits of stern ancestors, Poirot noted the subtle tremor in her fingers. Fear or excitement? The air carried the scent of roses and something metallic, like polished silver or blood. The gathering was to be a weekend of dances and dinners, ostensibly to celebrate the manor's recent restoration. But Poirot sensed an undercurrent. Lady Harrington introduced him to the assembled guests in the drawing room, a space warmed by a roaring fire that cast flickering shadows on velvet drapes. First was Sir Geoffrey Beaumont, a bluff industrialist with a ruddy face and a booming laugh, his fortune tied to steel mills that supplied Harrington's ships. "Poirot, eh? Heard you're a wizard with mysteries. Hope we don't need one here, unless it's who stole the last brandy," he joked, but his eyes darted to Lady Harrington with poorly concealed longing. Next came Miss Clara Voss, a young American heiress with bobbed blonde hair and a flapper's sparkle, her diamonds rivaling the chandelier. She was Lady Harrington's niece, recently arrived from New York, bubbling with tales of jazz clubs and speakeasies. Uncle Reggie always said you'd sniff out trouble, Monsieur Poirot, she said with a wink. But this weekend's all fun. No skeletons in our closets. Poirot smiled politely, noting her fidgety hands. Skeletons, he knew, had a way of rattling free. Then there was Dr. Elias Thorne, a gaunt physician with wire-rimmed spectacles and a clinical demeanour, who had attended Lord Harrington in his final days. "A tragic accident," he intoned, shaking Poirot's hand firmly. "The gun misfired during the hunt, nothing more." Yet his voice held a note of defensiveness, as if reciting a well-rehearsed line. Beside him stood Madame Isabelle Duval, a French expatriate and Lady Harrington's confidant, her elegant black dress a stark contrast to the widow's white. "Enchanté, monsieur," she purred, her accent thick as Parisian fog. "Evelyn speaks so highly of you. We need your insight. Things are not as they seem." The last guest was Colonel Marcus Hale, a retired military man with a scarred cheek and a stiff posture, his medals gleaming. He had served with Lord Harrington in the Boer War and now managed the estate's finances. "Poirot," he grunted. "Good to have a sharp mind about. Harrington's death left loose ends. Debts, you know?" His gaze lingered on Lady Harrington, accusatory. As cocktails were served, gin fizzes and martinis clinking like ice in a storm, Poirot observed the dynamics. Lady Harrington moved among them like a gracious host, but her laughter rang hollow. Whispers floated. Sir Geoffrey's business ties to the late lord had soured over a disputed contract. Miss Voss stood to inherit if her aunt remarried. Dr. Thorne had prescribed unusual tonics before the accident. Madame Duval harboured old jealousies from Paris salons, and Colonel Hale grumbled about embezzled funds. The air thickened with unspoken tensions, like a storm brewing over the moors. Dinner was announced, a lavish affair in the dining hall with silver candelabras and courses of pheasant, asparagus, and crème brûlée. Conversation flowed, but Poirot's ears caught snippets. Reginald's will was ironclad, but that codicil, from the Colonel. "She wears white to mock us all," muttered the doctor under his breath. Lady Harrington, at the head of the table, raised her glass. "To old friends and new beginnings," she toasted, her eyes meeting Poirot's with a plea. He nodded, his little grey cells already piecing together the puzzle. After dinner, the group adjourned to the ballroom, where a gramophone played waltzes and couples paired off. Poirot, not one for dancing, watched from a chaise. Lady Harrington glided alone in her white gown, a solitary figure under the lights. Suddenly, a scream pierced the music. Miss Voss, pointing to the French doors. Outside, in the garden terrace, lay Sir Geoffrey, face down in a pool of blood, a jewelled dagger protruding from his back. The widow in white froze, her hand to her mouth as chaos erupted. Poirot sprang to action, his voice calm amid the panic. "Mes amis, no one leaves this room. The dance of deception has begun." As he examined the body, rigour just setting in, the dagger wiped clean, he noted the victim's clenched fist holding a torn scrap of white fabric. Lady Harrington's gown, or a clever plant. The guests murmured accusations, eyes shifting suspiciously. This was no accident. It was murder, staged amid the manor's shadows. With the police summoned but delayed by the storm, Poirot took charge, interviewing each guest briefly. Sir Geoffrey had argued with Lady Harrington earlier about a loan. Miss Voss claimed she'd seen a shadowy figure in the garden. Dr. Thorne admitted prescribing sedatives that could mask poisons. The night deepened, secrets simmering like the tisane Poirot sipped to steady his thoughts. As the chapter of introductions closed on this fateful evening, the little detective pondered the widow's role. Was she victim or villain? The rain continued its assault outside, mirroring the turmoil within, leading us seamlessly into the revelations awaiting in the shadows of Shadowbrook. Chapter 2. The Garden of Secrets. The storm raged on, battering Shadowbrook Manor's stone walls as if nature itself demanded answers for the crime within. Hercule Poirot stood by the French doors, his keen eyes scanning the rain-soaked garden where Sir Geoffrey Beaumont's body had been discovered. The ballroom, now dimmed, buzzed with nervous whispers from the guests, each clutching a glass or a handkerchief, their faces pale under the chandelier's flicker. Poirot had ordered the body covered with a tablecloth, but left undisturbed until the police could brave the flooded roads. He adjusted his tie, his mind a whirlwind of observations, and stepped into the night air, the scent of wet earth and roses heavy around him. The garden terrace, illuminated by flickering lanterns, was a maze of manicured hedges and marble statues, their faces eerie in the shadows. Poirot crouched near the spot where Sir Geoffrey had fallen, the cobblestones still stained dark, despite the rain's efforts to wash them clean. The jewelled dagger, now in his gloved hand, gleamed with intricate engravings, a peacock feather motif, suggesting wealth and vanity. No fingerprints, of course. The killer was meticulous. The scrap of white fabric, torn and muddy, lay sealed in his pocket for later scrutiny. He traced the path from the terrace to a side gate, its latch slick with moisture, hinting at a recent exit or entry. Inside, the guests had been herded to the library, a cavernous room lined with leather-bound tomes and a crackling fireplace. Lady Harrington, still in her white gown, stood by a globe, spinning it absently, her composure fraying like the hem of her dress. Poirot re-entered, his presence commanding silence. "Mes amis," he began, his voice steady. "A man is dead, and the truth hides among us like a serpent in the grass. I shall ask questions, and you shall answer, honestly, if you please." He turned first to Miss Clara Voss, whose earlier vivacity had dulled to a jittery unease. She perched on a velvet ottoman, twisting a pearl bracelet. "Miss Voss, you screamed when you saw the body. What drew your eyes to the terrace?" Clara's lips parted, then hesitated. I was restless," she said. "The dancing felt stifling, so I glanced outside. The doors were open and I saw something move. Then I saw him, Sir Geoffrey, sprawled there." Her voice cracked, but Poirot noted her eyes flicked toward Madame Duval, who sat stone-faced across the room. Madame Duval, her black dress absorbing the firelight, met Poirot's gaze with defiance. "Madame, you were near the French doors earlier, no? Did you see this movement Miss Voss describes?" The Frenchwoman's lips curled slightly. "I was admiring the roses through the glass, monsieur. I saw nothing unusual. Only rain and shadows." Her tone was smooth, too smooth, like a rehearsed aria. Poirot's moustache twitched. Lies, he knew, often wore the mask of elegance. Colonel Marcus Hale paced by the fireplace, his boots clicking on the oak floor. "This is nonsense, Poirot," he barked. "Geoffrey was drunk, stumbled outside, and some vagrant knifed him for his wallet." Poirot raised an eyebrow. "A vagrant with a jewelled dagger, Colonel? And where is this wallet you speak of?" Sir Geoffrey's pockets were empty, save for a cigar case. The Colonel reddened, muttering about damned thieves, but his scar seemed to pulse with unease. Dr. Elias Thorne, polishing his spectacles, offered a clinical perspective. "The wound suggests a single precise strike to the heart. Death was instantaneous. Whoever wielded that dagger knew anatomy. Or was lucky." His voice was detached, but his fingers trembled as he replaced his glasses. Poirot filed this away. A doctor's knowledge could cut both ways, saving lives or ending them. Lady Harrington, silent until now, stepped forward, her white gown ghostly in the firelight. "Monsieur Poirot, this tragedy tarnishes my home. I beg you, find the truth quickly." Her eyes, wide and pleading, held a flicker of something. Guilt? Fear? Poirot inclined his head. "Madame, the truth is like a fine tapestry. Pull one thread, and the pattern reveals itself." "But I must know. Did Sir Geoffrey have enemies here?" The room stilled. Lady Harrington's lips parted, but before she could speak, a loud creak echoed from the hallway. All heads turned as Graves, the chauffeur, appeared, his coat dripping. "Beg pardon, milady, but the telephone lines are down. No police until morning." A collective gasp rose and Poirot's eyes narrowed. A killer trapped among them, with no escape and no help. This was a puzzle worthy of his little grey cells. He dismissed Graves with a nod and turned back to the guests. "Very well, let us consider the garden. Who among you ventured outside tonight?" Silence fell, thick as the fog beyond the windows. Then Miss Voss raised a trembling hand. "I did earlier before dinner. I needed air." "The roses. They're my aunt's pride." Lady Harrington nodded. "Clara's right. I tend them myself. But I was inside all evening." Colonel Hale snorted. "I checked the grounds at dusk. Security habit." All was quiet. Dr. Thorne and Madame Duval claimed to have stayed indoors, their alibis mirrored by the servants' accounts. Yet Poirot sensed gaps, like missing pieces in a mosaic. He excused himself to examine the terrace again, this time noticing a crushed rose petal near the gate, its crimson stark against the stone. It matched the blooms in Lady Harrington's garden, but its placement suggested haste, a footstep in flight. Back inside, he requested the servants' observations. A maid, trembling, admitted seeing a figure in a dark cloak near the terrace before the scream, but the rain obscured their face. A cloak, Poirot mused, could hide anyone, even a woman in white. As the clock struck midnight, the guests retired to their rooms under Poirot's strict orders to remain there. He sat alone in the library, sketching a diagram of the terrace and the guests' positions. The dagger, the fabric, the petal, these were clues, but the motive remained elusive. Was Sir Geoffrey's death tied to his business disputes, a personal grudge, or something deeper, rooted in the Manor's shadowed past? The fire crackled, casting long shadows as Poirot leaned back, his mind weaving connections. The widow's white gown, the garden's secrets, and the killer's bold strike formed a dance of deception he was determined to unravel. The night held its breath, leading us into the next twist of this deadly waltz. Chapter 3. The Hidden Room. The storm had settled into a restless drizzle by dawn, cloaking Shadowbrook Manor in a grey mist that seemed to seep into its very walls. Hercule Poirot, ever an early riser, stood in the library, his fingers tracing the spines of ancient books as the first light filtered through heavy drapes. Sleep had eluded him, his mind too occupied with the puzzle of Sir Geoffrey's murder. The jewelled dagger, the torn white fabric, the crushed rose petal. These were fragments, but the picture they formed remained maddeningly incomplete. He sipped a fresh tisane, its warmth grounding his racing thoughts, and resolved to explore the manor itself, for buildings, like people, often hid their truths in forgotten corners. Poirot began his search in the hallway beyond the library, where the maid had heard that eerie creak the previous night. The corridor, lined with faded tapestries depicting hunts and feasts, felt oppressive, as if the manor's history pressed down on the present. He tapped the walls gently, listening for hollow echoes, a trick he'd learned in a case involving a smuggler's lair in Brussels. Near a portrait of a stern-faced Harrington ancestor, his knuckles struck a panel that sounded different, duller, with a faint give. Pressing carefully, he discovered a seam, and with a soft click, a section of the wall swung inward, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The air within was musty, tinged with the scent of old wood and something sharper, lamp oil perhaps. Poirot, ever cautious, retrieved a candelabrum from a nearby table and lit its tapers, casting a flickering glow on damp stone walls. The staircase spiraled down to a hidden room, small but meticulously organized. Shelves held ledgers, their pages yellowed but legible, alongside sealed envelopes and a locked wooden box inlaid with mother of pearl. A single chair faced a dusty desk, and above it hung a map of shipping routes, ports from London to Calcutta, marked with red ink. Poirot's eyes gleamed. This was no mere storeroom, but a secret study. Likely Lord Harrington's, he opened a ledger, its entries detailing transactions, dates, sums, and cryptic initials like JG and MH. The figures were staggering, hinting at clandestine deals far beyond legitimate trade. One note, scrawled in a hurried hand, read, "GB threatens exposure. Must act." Poirot's moustache twitched. GB's could only be Sir Geoffrey Beaumont. Had he uncovered something damning about Lord Harrington's empire? Something worth killing for? The envelopes yielded little, mostly deeds and contracts, but one bore a wax seal with the same peacock feather motif as the dagger. Inside was a single sheet, a codicil to Lord Harrington's will, unsigned, granting a substantial sum to an unnamed beneficiary upon Lady Harrington's remarriage. The locked box resisted his attempts to open it, but its weight suggested contents of significance, perhaps keys, jewels, or documents. Poirot pocketed a small brass key he found taped beneath the desk, suspecting it might fit the box later. As he ascended, sealing the panel behind him, footsteps approached. It was Colonel Marcus Hale, his face etched with suspicion. "Poirot, what are you doing skulking about?" he demanded, his hand resting on a walking stick that seemed more weapon than aid. "Monsieur le Colonel, I merely explore the manor's charms," Poirot replied smoothly, gesturing to the tapestries. "Such history, non? But tell me, did you know of any private offices your late friend Lord Harrington kept?" Hale's eyes narrowed, his scar tightening. Reginald was a private man, kept his business close. If you're poking into his affairs, you'd best tread carefully. The warning hung heavy, but Poirot only smiled. Noting the colonel's clenched jaw, returning to the library, Poirot summoned the guests, who gathered with varying degrees of reluctance. Lady Harrington, her white gown now paired with a shawl, seemed paler, her eyes darting to the hallway. "Monsieur Poirot, have you progress?" she asked, her voice tight. Poirot clasped his hands behind his back. "Progress, madame, is like the tide. It comes slowly but surely. I have questions. Who among you knew of Lord Harrington's business dealings with Sir Geoffrey?" Clara Voss fidgeted, her bracelet jingling. "Uncle Reggie never discussed business with me. I just know Sir Geoffrey was always around, talking about ships and profits." Dr. Elias Thorne adjusted his spectacles. "I treated Lord Harrington's health, not his finances. But Sir Geoffrey did visit often, arguing about investments." Madame Isabelle Duval, sipping a coffee, added, "In Paris, men like Geoffrey always chase money. Perhaps he chased too far." Her tone was cryptic, her gaze fixed on Lady Harrington. Colonel Hale, still gripping his stick, growled, "Geoffrey was a leech, always pressing Reginald for more shares in the shipping ventures. After Reginald's death, he hounded Lady Evelyn for the same." Poirot's eyes flicked to the widow, who looked away, her fingers twisting the shawl. "And you, madame, did Sir Geoffrey seek something from you?" Lady Harrington hesitated. "He suggested a partnership to honour Reginald's legacy. I refused. He was not pleased." The room grew tense, each guest eyeing the others. Poirot changed tack. "The dagger that killed Sir Geoffrey, its design is distinctive. A peacock feather. Does it spark recognition?" Silence followed, but Clara's face paled slightly, and Madame Duval's coffee cup paused mid-air. No one spoke, yet the air crackled with unspoken truths. Poirot dismissed them, instructing them to remain in the manor, and sought out Graves, the chauffeur, in the servants' quarters. Graves, polishing silver in a cramped pantry, was taciturn but cooperative. "Saw nothing last night, sir, except the rain. But that dagger, I've seen its like before. Lord Harrington had a pair, gifts from some Eastern merchant. Kept them in his study." Poirot's pulse quickened. "And where is this study, Monsieur Graves?" The chauffeur shrugged. "Upstairs, near his old rooms, locked since his death." Poirot thanked him, suspecting the hidden room was the true study, its secrecy a clue to the murder's roots. As noon approached, the manor felt like a pressure cooker, its inhabitants simmering with distrust. Poirot returned to the hidden room, using the brass key to unlock the box. Inside were letters, some in Lord Harrington's hand, others in an elegant script, possibly Lady Harrington's, detailing a dispute over a missing shipment of rare artifacts. One name recurred, J.G., perhaps Sir Geoffrey or another player in this deadly game. The drizzle outside ceased, leaving a heavy stillness. Poirot closed the box, his mind alight with connections. The secret study, the coded ledgers, the peacock dagger, these pointed to a conspiracy older than Sir Geoffrey's death, one that threatened to unravel the widow's carefully woven facade. The manor's walls whispered of betrayal, drawing us deeper into the labyrinth of lies. Chapter 4. The echoes of the past. The midday sun struggled through the clouds, casting a pale glow over Shadowbrook Manor, but the air inside remained thick with suspicion. Hercule Poirot sat in the conservatory, a glass-domed haven filled with exotic orchids and the faint hum of trapped humidity. He had chosen this spot for its quiet, away from the guests' restless pacing, to pore over the letters from the hidden room's locked box. The papers, brittle with age, spoke of a tangled web, shipments gone astray, debts unpaid, and a name, J.G., that danced through the correspondence like a ghost. Poirot's fingers paused on a letter dated a year before Lord Harrington's death, its tone urgent. J.G. must be silenced, or all is lost. His grey cells buzzed. The past, it seemed, was clawing its way into the present. He tucked the letters into his coat and strolled to the upstairs study Graves had mentioned. A formal room unlike the secret one below. The door, heavy oak with a tarnished brass lock, yielded to a key from the housekeeper, Mrs. Finch, a wiry woman with eyes like a hawk. Inside, the study was a shrine to Lord Harrington's life. Mahogany desk, nautical charts, and a glass case holding a single jewelled dagger, twin to the murder weapon. Its peacock feather engraving glinted, confirming Graves' tale of a pair. The empty slot beside it was a silent accusation. Poirot examined the desk, finding only routine papers, bills, hunting logs. But a faint scratch on the floor caught his eye, leading to a loose floorboard. Beneath it lay a photograph, faded but clear. A younger Lady Harrington, radiant in white, beside a man who was not Lord Harrington. The man's face was obscured, scratched out with deliberate violence. Footsteps interrupted his thoughts. Mrs. Finch hovered at the door, her apron twisted in her hands. "Monsieur Poirot, you shouldn't be here." This was his lordship's private place. Poirot smiled, disarming. "Madame Finch, a house keeps secrets, but servants see all. Did Lord Harrington entertain particular guests here?" Her lips tightened. "Only Sir Geoffrey, often. They'd argue loudly about money, shipments. Once, I heard Sir Geoffrey shout about a betrayal in Calcutta. Her ladyship was there too sometimes, always in white, even then." Her voice dropped. "After his lordship's death, she locked this room. Said it was too painful." Poirot nodded, dismissing her gently, but her words lingered. Calcutta, a port from the secret room's map. He descended to the drawing room, where the guests were gathered for luncheon, their appetites dulled by the morning's tension. Lady Harrington, seated at the head, picked at her plate, her white dress pristine but her eyes shadowed. Poirot addressed the group, his tone light but probing. "Mes amis, let us speak of Calcutta. Did Sir Geoffrey's business ventures there touch any of you?" Clara Voss dropped her fork, a clatter breaking the silence. "Calcutta? I've never been. Uncle Reggie mentioned it once. Something about spices or silks." Her voice was too quick, her cheeks flushed. Dr. Elias Thorne cleared his throat. "I treated a sailor from one of Harrington's ships years ago. Malaria from Calcutta. He rambled about stolen cargo, but fever makes men delirious." His eyes avoided Poirot's. Madame Isabelle Duval sipped her wine, her smile enigmatic. "Calcutta is a city of secrets, monsieur. Men like Sir Geoffrey thrive there, and fall." Colonel Marcus Hale, carving his roast, grunted. Geoffrey and Reginald had a venture there years back. Went sour. Bad blood followed. Lady Harrington's hand trembled, spilling a drop of wine. Reginald rarely spoke of Calcutta, she said softly. It was a painful chapter. Poirot observed her closely. Her grief seemed genuine, yet rehearsed, like an actress hitting her mark. He shifted focus. The dagger that killed Sir Geoffrey. Its twin rests in the study upstairs. Who had access to that room? The guests exchanged glances, but none spoke. Lady Harrington's voice was barely a whisper. Only I have the key, monsieur. But I swear I never touched those daggers. The meal ended in uneasy silence, and Poirot excused himself to the garden, seeking clarity among the roses. The crushed petal from the murder night still nagged at him, its placement too deliberate. He knelt by the flower beds, noticing a faint trail of disturbed earth leading to a stone bench. Beneath it, half buried, was a silk glove, white, embroidered with a peacock feather. It matched Lady Harrington's gown, but its size suggested a smaller hand. Clara's? Isabel's? Or a clever misdirection? Poirot pocketed the glove, his mind racing. He returned to the conservatory, where Madame Duval stood alone, pruning an orchid with surgical precision. "Madame, you know more of this house than you say," Poirot ventured. Her eyes met his, cool and assessing. "In France we learn to watch, not speak. But I will say this. Evelyn's white dresses are no mourning. They are armour. Ask her about the man she loved before Reginald." She snipped a stem, the sound sharp in the humid air. Poirot's thoughts swirled as he left her. The photograph, the Calcutta venture, the glove. These were threads of a larger tapestry, woven with jealousy, greed, or perhaps vengeance. The manor's past was no mere backdrop. It was a player in this drama, its echoes fueling the killer's motive. As the afternoon waned, the clouds parted, casting long shadows that hinted at deeper truths waiting to be uncovered. Chapter 5. The masquerade of motives. The afternoon light filtered through Shadowbrook Manor's tall windows, painting the grand staircase in hues of gold and shadow, but the warmth did little to ease the chill of suspicion that gripped the household. Hercule Poirot, his polished shoes silent on the thick carpet, moved with purpose toward the guest quarters, the white silk glove from the garden tucked safely in his pocket. Its peacock feather embroidery nagged at his mind, a delicate clue that pointed to someone, or something, beyond Lady Harrington's wardrobe. The photograph from the study, with its defaced figure, and Madame Duval's cryptic words about a past love, had set his little grey cells ablaze. This murder, he sensed, was not just about Sir Geoffrey. It was a reckoning for sins buried deep in the manor's history. Poirot began his inquiries with Clara Voss, whose room overlooked the garden terrace. He found her at a vanity, brushing her blonde bob with nervous energy, her pearl bracelet glinting in the mirror. "Miss Voss," he began, his voice gentle but firm. "The garden holds secrets, does it not? You were there before dinner, near the roses. Did you see anyone else?" Clara's brush paused, her reflection betraying a flicker of panic. "Just the gardeners, monsieur. I was sketching the flowers. I like to draw." She gestured to a sketchbook, its pages filled with delicate pencil drawings of roses, and curiously a sketch of a man's face, half finished, with sharp cheekbones and shadowed eyes. "Who is this?" Poirot asked, pointing. Clara flushed. "Just imagination. No one real." Her lie was as transparent as the glass in her window. Next, Poirot sought Dr. Elias Thorne, who was in his room organising a leather medical bag, its contents gleaming with sterile precision. "Doctor, your knowledge of anatomy is impressive," Poirot said, eyeing a scalpel. "The dagger's strike was precise, as you noted. Could someone without training wield it so?" Thorne's spectacles slipped slightly. "Possible, but unlikely. A lucky thrust, perhaps." His voice was steady, but his fingers lingered on a vial of clear liquid. "Sedative, or something more sinister?" Poirot pressed further. "You mentioned a sailor from Calcutta, raving of stolen cargo. Did he name names?" Thorne shook his head. "Delirium, nothing more. I don't recall specifics, yet his eyes darted to the door, as if expecting an eavesdropper. In the corridor, Poirot encountered Colonel Marcus Hale, his military bearing rigid as he polished a pocket watch. "Colonel, your friend Lord Harrington had dealings in Calcutta that soured. Did they involve a man, perhaps one close to Lady Harrington?" Hale's scar twitched. "You're digging in dangerous dirt, Poirot. Reginald trusted few, especially after Calcutta. There was talk of a rival, a charming devil who turned Evelyn's head before their marriage. But he's long gone." His tone was dismissive, but his grip on the watch tightened. It's ticking loud in the silence. Madame Isabelle Duval was in the music room, her fingers coaxing a haunting melody from a grand piano. Poirot waited until the final note faded. "Madame, you hinted at Lady Harrington's past love. A man before her husband, non? Who was he?" Isabel's smile was a mask. "A ghost, monsieur. A man who promised her the world, then vanished. Evelyn never speaks of him but her white dresses. They began after he left." She played a sharp chord, as if punctuating a warning. Poirot noted her guarded words. She knew more, but her loyalty, or fear, held her tongue. Finally, Poirot found Lady Harrington in her private sitting room, surrounded by white lace curtains, a portrait of Lord Harrington glaring from the wall. "Madame," he said, producing the glove, "this was found near the murder scene. Its design matches your gowns, yet it is not yours." "Whose then?" Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "I've never seen it, monsieur. Many admire my style. Perhaps a guest's imitation." Her voice was calm, but her hands betrayed her, clenching the arms of her chair. Poirot leaned closer. "And the man in the photograph, defaced from your husband's study, was he the one before Lord Harrington?" Her breath caught. "You pry too far. That was a lifetime ago. It has no bearing on this tragedy." But her eyes, glistening with unshed tears, told a different story. As evening approached, the guests gathered for a tense tea in the parlour, the air heavy with unspoken accusations. Poirot observed their interactions, noting Clara's avoidance of Isabel, Thorne's subtle glances at the Colonel, and Hale's protective stance near Lady Harrington. The glove, the photograph, the Calcutta venture, these clues wove a tapestry of motives, each guest a potential thread in the killer's design. Had Sir Geoffrey known too much about a past betrayal? Was the glove a plant to frame the widow, or a careless mistake? A sudden commotion broke his thoughts. A footman rushed in, breathless. "Monsieur Poirot, the police have sent word. They'll arrive by dusk, storm or no storm." The guests stirred, relief mingling with dread. Poirot's mind raced. Time was narrowing, and the killer might act again to protect their secret. He excused himself, returning to the conservatory to re-examine the letters, searching for the elusive J.G. The name, he realized, might not be Sir Geoffrey, but the mysterious rival from Lady Harrington's past, a man whose shadow loomed over the manor like the storm itself. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the manor in twilight, Poirot felt the weight of the case pressing in. The masquerade of motives was unravelling, each clue a step closer to the truth. Yet the killer remained a phantom, hidden among the guests. The evening promised revelations, drawing us deeper into the heart of this deadly dance. Chapter 6. The Whisper of the Will Twilight. Draped Shadowbrook Manor in a veil of indigo, the air thick with the scent of impending rain as the police's arrival loomed. Hercule Poirot stood in the manor's archive room, a dusty chamber tucked behind the library, where old documents and family records mouldered in oak cabinets. The letters from the hidden study had pointed to a codicil in Lord Harrington's will, and Poirot, ever meticulous, sought the original document to confirm its terms. His fingers sifted through yellowed papers, his candle casting shadows that danced like spectres. The will, he suspected, held the key to the motives swirling around Sir Geoffrey's murder, a key that might also unlock the identity of J.G. The archive was a labyrinth of ledgers and deeds, but Poirot's sharp eyes soon found a sealed folder marked with the Harrington crest. Inside was Lord Harrington's will, dated 2 years before his death. It left the bulk of his estate to Lady Evelyn, with provisions for Clara Voss upon her marriage, and a trust for estate upkeep managed by Colonel Hale. But a single line, added in fresh ink, caught Poirot's attention. Should Evelyn remarry, a sum of 50,000 shall go to J.G., in gratitude for past services. The codicil was signed, unlike the draft in the hidden room, but the initials J.G. were maddeningly vague. Was this the rival lover Madame Duval hinted at, or someone else entirely? Poirot's thoughts were interrupted by a soft creak, the archive door easing open. It was Mrs. Finch, the housekeeper, her lantern casting a warm glow. "Monsieur Poirot, you'll catch your death in this chill," she said, her voice laced with concern. Or was it suspicion? "Madame Finch," Poirot replied, closing the folder. "This will speaks of a J.G. Does the name stir memories?" Her face tightened. Plenty of names passed through this house. Could be anyone, businessman, friend. His lordship was generous to a fault. She turned to leave, but Poirot caught a flicker of unease in her eyes, as if she knew more than she dared say. He descended to the dining hall, where the guests were gathered for a sombre supper, their faces drawn under the candlelight. Lady Harrington, in her unyielding white, sat at the head, her fork untouched. Poirot took his seat, his voice cutting through the clink of cutlery. "Mes amis, a will is a map of intentions, but also of grudges. Lord Harrington's will mentions a beneficiary, J.G. Who might this be?" The room stilled. Clara Voss's eyes widened, her napkin crumpling. I don't know any J.G. Uncle Reggie never mentioned such a person." Her voice was brittle, like glass about to shatter. Dr. Elias Thorne, slicing his meat with surgical precision, spoke up. "Wills are private matters, Poirot. Why drag them into this?" His tone was defensive, his spectacles catching the light. Colonel Hale beside him snorted. "If it's about money, check Geoffrey's accounts. He was always sniffing around Reginald's fortune, especially after that Calcutta mess." Madame Isabelle Duval, swirling her wine, added, "In France, wills breed betrayal. Perhaps this J.G. is a shadow from Evelyn's past, no?" Her gaze lingered on Lady Harrington, who paled but said nothing. Poirot turned to the widow. "Madame, this codicil grants a fortune to J.G. upon your remarriage. Did Sir Geoffrey know of it?" Lady Harrington's lips parted, then closed. "He may have heard rumours. He pressed me to remarry, saying it would secure the estate. I refused." Her voice was steady, but her fingers twisted a pearl necklace, its beads clicking softly. Poirot noted the tension. The will was a fuse, and Sir Geoffrey's death might have been its spark. After supper, Poirot followed a hunch to the servants' quarters, seeking the footman who had reported the police's imminent arrival. The young man, Tom, was polishing boots in a cramped alcove. "Tom, you move freely about the manor," Poirot said. "Did you ever hear talk of a J.G. among Lord Harrington's circle?" Tom hesitated, his cloth pausing. "Once, sir, I overheard Sir Geoffrey in the study, shouting about a Jonathan Gray who cheated his lordship in Calcutta. Said he'd ruin him if he showed his face again." Poirot's pulse quickened. Jonathan Gray, a name at last. Returning to the archive, Poirot searched for any trace of Jonathan Gray. A shipping manifest, buried in a crate, listed a J. Gray as a partner in a Calcutta venture alongside Harrington and Beaumont. A note in the margin in Lord Harrington's hand read, "Gray's betrayal cost us dearly, never again." Had Gray resurfaced, threatening to expose old sins? Or was he the defaced man in the photograph, tied to Lady Harrington's heart? As night deepened, Poirot stood by the archive window, watching the first police lanterns flicker in the distance. The will's codicil, the name Jonathan Gray, the white glove, each clue tightened the noose around the killer's identity. The manor pulsed with secrets, its walls echoing with motives of greed and vengeance. The police would soon demand answers, but Poirot knew the truth was closer, hidden in the shadows of the widow's past, leading us into the next turn of this intricate dance. Chapter 7. The shadow of Jonathan Gray. The police lanterns bobbed like fireflies in the misty dusk, their glow piercing the fog that clung to Shadowbrook Manor's grounds. Hercule Poirot stood at the manor's entrance, his overcoat buttoned against the damp, watching the constables approach. Their arrival promised order, but also pressure. Poirot knew he must outpace their plodding methods to unmask the killer. The name Jonathan Gray, unearthed from the footman's memory and the shipping manifest, burned in his mind like a beacon. This man, tied to a Calcutta betrayal and perhaps Lady Harrington's heart, was no mere phantom. He was the pivot around which this murder turned. Poirot's little grey cells hummed as he re-entered the manor, determined to chase this shadow to its source. Inside, the grand hall was hushed, the guests confined to their rooms under Poirot's orders, their nerves fraying like old rope. He sought out the butler, Mr. Langley, a gaunt man with a perpetual frown, who was polishing a silver tray in the pantry. "Monsieur Langley," Poirot began, his tone disarming, "you served Lord Harrington for many years. Tell me of Jonathan Gray." Langley's cloth stilled, his eyes narrowing. "Gray was trouble, sir. A charmer, years ago, who worked with his lordship in Calcutta, swindled a deal, rare artefacts, they said, and vanished. Broke her ladyship's heart, too, before she wed Lord Reginald." His voice held a trace of disdain, as if Gray's name soured the air. Poirot pressed, "And did he ever return?" Langley shook his head. "Not that I saw, but Sir Geoffrey mentioned him once, last year, furious, saying Gray had the nerve to write, demanding money." Poirot's moustache twitched. A blackmailer from the past could explain much. He moved to the drawing room, where he had arranged for Lady Harrington to meet him alone. She entered, her white gown shimmering in the lamplight, her face a mask of poised grief. "Madame," Poirot said, producing the defaced photograph from the study. This man, scratched from memory, was he Jonathan Gray? Her hand froze mid-gesture, her eyes locking onto the image. "You dig too deep, monsieur," she whispered. "Jonathan was a mistake, a youthful folly before Reginald. He betrayed us all in Calcutta and disappeared. I have not seen him in 20 years. Her voice cracked, but her gaze was steady, daring Poirot to doubt her. "And yet," Poirot countered, "Sir Geoffrey spoke of him recently, no? Perhaps threatening to expose old wounds." Lady Harrington's lips tightened. "Geoffrey was cruel, hinting at scandals to pressure me into business deals. If he knew of Jonathan, he never said directly." Her fingers brushed her pearl necklace, a nervous tick Poirot noted. He let the silence linger, then asked, "The codicil in your husband's will, granting money to J.G., was this for Gray?" She flinched as if struck. I don't know. Reginald never explained it. I assumed it was a business debt." Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. Poirot sensed truth mingled with evasion. Leaving her, Poirot sought Clara Voss, finding her in the library, curled in an armchair with her sketchbook. The half-drawn face from earlier now had a name in his mind: Jonathan Gray. "Miss Voss," he said, sitting opposite, "your sketch resembles a man described as Jonathan Gray. Did you know him?" Clara's pencil snapped, her face paling. I heard stories from Aunt Evelyn, a man who hurt her long ago. I imagined his face from her descriptions. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes. Just a fancy, monsieur." Her voice trembled, and Poirot saw fear, not guilt, in her eyes. Was she protecting her aunt, or hiding her own encounter with Gray? Next, he found Dr. Elias Thorne in the conservatory, inspecting a wilting orchid with clinical detachment. "Doctor, you treated a sailor from Calcutta, yes? Did he ever mention Jonathan Gray?" Thorne's spectacles glinted. "The sailor? He babbled about many things. Thieves, artifacts. Gray's name might have come up, but it meant nothing to me." His tone was dismissive, but his hands shook slightly, betraying unease. Poirot probed. "And Sir Geoffrey's health? Any signs he feared blackmail?" Thorne hesitated. "He was agitated lately. Complained of sleeplessness. I prescribed a mild sedative, nothing more. The vial from Thorne's bag flashed in Poirot's memory. Could it hold more than medicine? Colonel Marcus Hale was in the billiard room, racking balls with a clatter. "Colonel," Poirot said, "Jonathan Gray betrayed Lord Harrington in Calcutta." Did Sir Geoffrey suspect Gray's return? Hale's cue struck hard, sending a ball spinning. Geoffrey was paranoid, always ranting about old enemies. Gray was one of them. Said he'd seen a man like him in London, months ago, sniffing around Evelyn's circle. Thought he wanted a cut of the estate. Hale's scar pulsed, his anger barely contained. Poirot noted the detail. A sighting in London. A thread to follow. Madame Isabelle Duval was last, found in the music room, her fingers idle on the piano keys. "Madame, you know of Jonathan Gray," Poirot stated, his voice firm. "What role does he play in this tragedy?" Isabelle's eyes met his, sharp as a blade. "He was Evelyn's first love, a scoundrel who left her broken. In Paris we heard he'd fled to America after Calcutta. If he's back, he's a vulture, circling for scraps." Her words were venomous, but Poirot sensed a personal grudge. Had Gray wronged her too? As the police finally entered, led by a gruff Inspector Reed, Poirot briefed them on the murder scene, withholding his clues for now. The guests were summoned, their faces a gallery of dread and defiance. Poirot watched them closely, the name Jonathan Gray a silent pulse in the room. Was Gray the killer, striking from the shadows? Or was his name a convenient mask for another's crime? The white glove, the codicil, the defaced photograph, all pointed to a past betrayal, now bleeding into the present. The inspector announced a search of the manor, but Poirot knew the truth lay not in rooms but in hearts. He retired to the conservatory, spreading his notes, the letters, the manifest, the glove. Before him, Jonathan Gray was the key, a shadow whose betrayal in Calcutta had sown seeds of vengeance. As the police's footsteps echoed through the manor, Poirot felt the puzzle tightening. Each clue a step closer to the killer's unmasking, leading us into the next act of this deadly performance. Chapter 8. The Unravelled Thread. The police presence brought a restless energy to Shadowbrook Manor, their heavy boots thudding through the corridors as they searched rooms and questioned servants. Hercule Poirot, however, preferred the quiet of the manor's morning room, a cosy space with rosewood panelling and tall windows overlooking the now sodden garden. He sat at a small table, his notes spread before him like a chessboard, the name Jonathan Gray circling his thoughts like a persistent pawn. The white glove, the codicil, the defaced photograph, all pointed to a past betrayal in Calcutta, but the killer's face remained elusive. Poirot sipped a fresh espresso, its bitter warmth sharpening his focus, and resolved to tug at the threads of this mystery until they unravelled. Inspector Reed, a burly man with a walrus moustache, had taken charge, his gruff voice echoing as he interrogated the guests in the drawing room. Poirot, preferring to observe, slipped into the background, his keen eyes noting every gesture. He began with a private word to the inspector, sharing only the essentials: the dagger, the glove, the timing of the murder, while keeping his suspicions about Jonathan Gray close. "Monsieur l'inspecteur," Poirot said, "the motive lies in the past. Permit me to pursue it, while you handle the formalities." Reed grunted, sceptical, but agreeable, and Poirot set out to confront the guests with new questions. He first sought Colonel Marcus Hale, found in the armory polishing a ceremonial sabre, its blade catching the dim light. "Colonel," Poirot began, "you mentioned Sir Geoffrey seeing a man like Jonathan Gray in London. Describe him." Hale's hand paused, his scar tightening. Tall, lean, dark hair greying at the temples. Wore a long coat, moved like he owned the place. Geoffrey swore it was Gray, said he'd know that smirk anywhere. Poirot nodded, filing away the description. "And did you see this man?" Hale shook his head. "No, but Geoffrey was spooked. Kept saying Gray wanted what was owed him." The colonel's eyes darkened. hinting at his own stake in this old grudge. Next, Poirot found Clara Voss in the conservatory, sketching feverishly, her pencil scratching out a new face, sharp cheekbones, greying temples, eerily matching Hale's description. "Miss Voss," Poirot said softly, "your sketches betray you. This is Jonathan Gray, no? Have you seen him?" Clara's hand froze, her eyes wide. I heard Aunt Evelyn describe him once, years ago. I just imagine him sometimes. But last week, at the village inn, I saw a man like that, watching the manor from across the road. I thought it was my mind playing tricks." Her voice trembled, and Poirot saw truth in her fear. She had seen someone. But was it Gray? Dr. Elias Thorne was in the library, poring over a medical journal, his spectacles low on his nose. "Doctor," Poirot said, "you prescribed sedatives for Sir Geoffrey's agitation. Could they have dulled his senses, made him an easier target?" Thorne bristled, shutting the book. "My prescriptions were standard, mild, harmless. Geoffrey was paranoid, ranting about old enemies, but I never heard him name Gray." Poirot leaned closer. "And the vial in your bag, is it merely sedative?" Thorne's face reddened. "Insulting, monsieur! It's laudanum for emergencies. I'm no poisoner." His indignation seemed genuine, but Poirot noted the vial's presence, a potential weapon in skilled hands. Madame Isabelle Duval was in the music room, her fingers tracing the piano keys without playing. "Madame," Poirot said, "you spoke of Jonathan Gray as a vulture. Have you seen him since Calcutta?" Isabelle's eyes met his, cold as winter. "Once, in Paris 5 years ago. He was begging favours from old acquaintances. Still charming, still dangerous. If he's here, he's after Evelyn's money, or her heart." Her voice held a bitter edge, as if Gray's charm had once stung her. Poirot pressed, "And the white glove, with the peacock feather, could it be his?" She laughed softly. "A man like Gray prefers shadows to silk. That glove is a woman's, monsieur." Her words were a deflection, but they sharpened Poirot's suspicion of a female hand in the crime. Finally, Poirot confronted Lady Harrington in her sitting room, where she stood by a window, her white gown stark against the darkening sky. "Madam," he said, producing the glove, "this was found near the murder. You claim it is not yours, yet its design mirrors your own. And Jonathan Gray, his name haunts this house. Was he here?" Her face paled, her hand clutching the curtain. "Jonathan is a ghost, monsieur. If he's returned, I've not seen him. As for the glove, many imitate my style. Clara, even Isabel, admires my dresses." Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of desperation. Poirot held her gaze. "And the codicil? Did Gray know of the money promised him?" She turned away. "If he did, he never approached me. Please, let the past stay buried." As night fell, Poirot joined the police in the ballroom, where Inspector Reed was cataloguing evidence. The dagger, now in police custody, had yielded no new clues, but Poirot's mind turned to the glove. He requested a servant fetch samples of the guests' gloves, and soon a maid presented a tray, Clara's beaded pear, Isabel's black lace, and Lady Harrington's white silk, none matching the peacock feather design. Yet a memory stirred. Mrs. Finch, the housekeeper, had worn gloves while cleaning, embroidered with a similar motif. Poirot sought her out in the kitchen, where she was scrubbing pots. "Madame Finch," he said, "your gloves, where are they?" Her hands froze, soap dripping. "Lost one yesterday, sir. Must have dropped it in the garden." Her voice was too quick, her eyes avoiding his. The police called a meeting, and Poirot watched the guests assemble, their faces a mosaic of fear and defiance. Clara clutched her sketchbook, Thorne adjusted his spectacles, Hale gripped his watch, Isabel sat poised, and Lady Harrington stood like a statue in white. Inspector Reed announced plans to detain everyone until alibis were verified, but Poirot interjected. "Mes amis, the truth is near. A man, perhaps Jonathan Gray, lurks in this tale, but the glove suggests a woman's hand. Tomorrow we shall confront the killer." As the guests dispersed, Poirot lingered, his notes now a map of motives, Grey's betrayal, the codicil's promise, the glove's misdirection. The manor's shadows seemed to whisper Grey's name, but Poirot sensed a deeper deception, one woven by someone closer than a ghost from Calcutta. The night held its secrets tightly, leading us into the final unravelling of this deadly dance. Chapter 9. The Dance of Truth. The morning broke over Shadowbrook Manor with a hesitant dawn, the sky bruised with clouds that mirrored the tension within its walls. Hercule Poirot stood in the grand ballroom, where Sir Geoffrey's body had been found 2 nights prior, now cleared of its grim tableau by the police. The chandeliers above gleamed dully, their crystals catching slivers of light, as if reluctant to illuminate the secrets still buried in the manor's heart. Poirot's little grey cells were alight with the threads he'd woven. The jewelled dagger, the white glove with its peacock feather embroidery, the codicil promising a fortune to J.G., and the elusive Jonathan Gray, whose shadow loomed over the murder like a spectre from Calcutta. The police, led by Inspector Reed, were methodical but slow, their searches yielding little beyond the physical evidence Poirot had already catalogued. He knew the truth lay not in fingerprints, but in the motives and lies of the living, and today he would force the killer to step into the light. Poirot had requested the guests gather in the ballroom at precisely 10 o'clock, and as the grandfather clock in the hall chimed, they filed in, their faces a gallery of apprehension. Lady Evelyn Harrington, clad in her signature white gown, stood near the French doors, her posture rigid, her eyes darting like a deer sensing a hunter. Clara Voss clutched her sketchbook, her blonde bob slightly dishevelled, as if sleep had been a stranger. Dr. Elias Thorne adjusted his spectacles, his medical bag at his feet, its contents a quiet threat in Poirot's mind. Colonel Marcus Hale leaned on his walking stick, his scar pulsing with suppressed anger, while Madame Isabelle Duval sat gracefully on a velvet chaise, her black dress a stark contrast to the widow's white, her smile as enigmatic as ever. Mrs. Finch, the housekeeper, hovered at the edge, her apron pristine but her hands twisting nervously. Inspector Reed and 2 constables stood by, ready to act, though Poirot had warned them to let him lead this final dance. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice clear and commanding, cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "A murder has been committed in this house, and the killer stands among us. Sir Geoffrey Beaumont was struck down with a jewelled dagger, a weapon from Lord Harrington's collection, and a white glove, embroidered with a peacock feather, was found near his body. These clues, they point to a past betrayal, a secret tied to Calcutta, and a man named Jonathan Gray. But the truth, it is not so simple. Let us unravel this dance of deception, step by step." He paced before the guests, his polished shoes clicking on the polished floor, his hands clasped behind his back. First the dagger. It was one of a pair, kept in Lord Harrington's study, locked away after his death. Only Lady Harrington held the key, yet she claims ignorance. Possible but improbable. Someone gained access, perhaps a servant, perhaps a guest with a talent for locks. His eyes flicked to Mrs. Finch, who stiffened, and then to Madame Duval, whose fingers twitched as if itching to play a piano key. Second, the glove. It matches Lady Harrington's style, but not her hand. Mrs. Finch admitted to losing a similar glove, yet its embroidery suggests a deliberate connection to the widow. A frame or a careless mistake? Poirot paused, letting the silence weigh on the room. Then the codicil in Lord Harrington's will, promising 50,000 talents to J.G. upon Lady Harrington's remarriage. This J.G., Jonathan Gray, a man who betrayed Lord Harrington, and perhaps Lady Harrington's heart in Calcutta. Sir Geoffrey, we learn, feared Gray's return, claiming to have seen him in London, demanding money. But is Gray here, or is his name a shadow cast to mislead? He turned to Lady Harrington, whose face was pale as her gown. "Madame, you deny seeing Jonathan Gray, yet your past with him lingers like perfume. Did Sir Geoffrey threaten to expose this history? To force your hand?" Lady Harrington's voice was a whisper. Geoffrey was cruel, yes, but I swear I've not seen Jonathan in years. The codicil, I knew nothing of its purpose. Her eyes glistened, but Poirot saw no tears, only a guarded resolve. Next, he faced Clara Voss. Miss Voss, your sketches betray a fascination with a man matching Gray's description. Tall, lean, graying. You saw him at the village inn, watching the manor. Why keep this secret? Clara's hands trembled, her sketchbook slipping to the floor, revealing the half-drawn face. I was scared, monsieur. I thought he was a ghost from Aunt Evelyn's stories. I didn't know what to do. Her voice cracked, and Poirot noted her fear seemed genuine, but her silence was a choice. Dr. Thorne was next, his spectacles glinting as he met Poirot's gaze. Doctor, your laudanum vial could dull a man's senses, or worse. Sir Geoffrey was agitated, you said, but did he fear poison? Thorne's jaw tightened. I'm a physician, not a murderer. My prescriptions were safe. Geoffrey's paranoia was his own doing. Poirot nodded, but the vial remained a question mark in his mind. Colonel Hale, gripping his stick, growled, Get to the point, Poirot. You're chasing ghosts. Poirot smiled thinly. Non, Colonel, I chase truths. You saw Sir Geoffrey as a leech draining the estate. Did you know of Gray's demands? Or did you act to protect Lady Harrington's fortune? Hale's scar reddened. I'd have run Gray through myself, but I didn't kill Geoffrey. Check my alibi. I was in the billiard room. Madame Duval's laugh broke the tension, light but cutting. Monsieur Poirot, you weave a fine tale, but you forget the heart. This murder is about love, not money. Poirot turned to her. Madame, you know Gray's charm, his betrayals. Did he wrong you too in Paris? Her smile faded. He wronged many, but I am no killer. Ask Mrs. Finch about her glove. She's closer to this than you think. Mrs. Finch gasped, her face flushing. I lost it, I swear. I'd never harm anyone. Poirot raised a hand for silence. Enough. Let us consider the scene. Sir Geoffrey was killed outside, yet no one saw the act. The glove suggests a woman, the dagger a plan, and Jonathan Gray a motive. But I, Hercule Poirot, see another thread. He produced a small envelope from his pocket, found that morning in the archive, sealed with a peacock feather wax. This letter, written by Lord Harrington, names Jonathan Gray not as an enemy, but as a friend who saved his life in Calcutta, only to be betrayed by another, Sir Geoffrey. The codicil was gratitude, not blackmail. Sir Geoffrey, fearing exposure of his own treachery, may have provoked his killer. The guests stirred, whispers rising. Poirot's voice sharpened. But who wielded the dagger? The glove points to Mrs. Finch, yet her hands are calloused, not delicate. Madame Duval, your knowledge of Gray is too intimate, your deflections too clever. Miss Voss, your sketches suggest obsession, not innocence. Colonel Hale, your loyalty to the estate is fierce, perhaps deadly. And Lady Harrington, your white gowns hide a heart wounded by Gray, a wound Sir Geoffrey exploited. A sudden crash interrupted. A vase, knocked over by Mrs. Finch, who bolted for the door. The constables seized her, but Poirot waved them back. Madame Finch, you lost more than a glove. You overheard Sir Geoffrey's threats, did you not? About Calcutta? About Gray? Tears streamed down her face. I heard him, yes. He said he'd ruin her ladyship, drag up old scandals. I took the dagger to scare him, but I didn't kill him. I dropped it in the garden. Her confession hung heavy, but Poirot sensed it was incomplete. Inspector Reed stepped forward, impatient. Enough theatrics, Poirot. We'll take her in. But Poirot shook his head. Non, Inspector. Mrs. Finch is a piece of the puzzle, but not its heart. The killer is here, watching, waiting. His eyes swept the room, locking on each guest, searching for the flinch that would betray them. The ballroom seemed to hold its breath, the truth teetering on the edge of revelation, as the dance of deception neared its final steps. Chapter 10. The Final Waltz. The ballroom of Shadowbrook Manor stood frozen in the morning light, its chandeliers casting fractured gleams across the polished floor where Sir Geoffrey Beaumont had met his end. Hercule Poirot, his small frame commanding the room, faced the assembled guests. Lady Evelyn Harrington, Clara Voss, Dr. Elias Thorne, Colonel Marcus Hale, Madame Isabelle Duval, and the trembling housekeeper, Mrs. Finch. The police, led by Inspector Reed, flanked the doors, their presence a silent pressure as Poirot prepared to unveil the truth. The clues, the jewelled dagger, the white glove with its peacock feather, the codicil, the name Jonathan Gray, and the echoes of Calcutta, had woven a tapestry of deception, and now Poirot's little grey cells would tear it apart. He clasped his hands, his voice steady as a metronome. Mes amis, the dance of deception ends today. The killer of Sir Geoffrey stands among us, and I, Hercule Poirot, shall name them. The guests shifted uneasily, their eyes darting. Lady Harrington's pale as her white gown, Clara's clutching her sketchbook, Thorne's behind his spectacles, Hale's scarred face taut, Duval's lips curled in a guarded smile, and Mrs. Finch's hands wringing her apron. Poirot began, pacing slowly. This murder is a puzzle of the past and present, woven with greed, betrayal, and a love long buried. Let us retrace the steps. Sir Geoffrey was killed with a dagger from Lord Harrington's study, its peacock feather design a mark of wealth. A white glove, embroidered to match Lady Harrington's gowns, was found near the body, and a codicil in Lord Harrington's will promised $50,000 to J.G. Jonathan Gray, a name that haunts this manor like a ghost. He turned to the widow, her white silk shimmering like a spectre. Lady Harrington, you claimed Jonathan Gray was a youthful folly, a betrayer from Calcutta who vanished. Yet Sir Geoffrey's threats to expose your past suggested he knew more. Did he, madam? Evelyn's lips parted, her voice a whisper. Geoffrey taunted me, yes, saying he'd ruin my name with old scandals. But I swear I did not kill him. Her eyes glistened, but Poirot saw strength beneath her grief. He faced Clara next. Miss Voss, your sketches of a man, tall, lean, greying, match Gray's description. You saw him at the village inn watching the manor. Why hide this? Clara's voice shook. I thought he was a dream, a figure from Aunt Evelyn's stories. I was afraid to stir up her pain. Her fear seemed real, but Poirot noted her quick glances at Isabelle Duval, as if seeking reassurance. Dr. Thorne, polishing his spectacles, met Poirot's gaze. Doctor, your laudanum could have dulled Sir Geoffrey's senses, making him an easy target. Did you administer it that night? Thorne's face reddened. I gave him nothing but a mild sedative days before. I'm no murderer! His indignation rang true. But Poirot kept the vial in mind. A tool, perhaps, but not the key. Colonel Hale, gripping his walking stick, growled, Poirot, you're chasing shadows. Geoffrey was a leech, but I didn't kill him. Poirot nodded. Your loyalty to the estate is fierce, Colonel, but your anger at Sir Geoffrey's greed suggests a motive. Did you know of Gray's return? Hale's scar twitched. I heard rumours, nothing more. Geoffrey claimed he'd seen him, demanding money. Madame Duval's laugh cut through, sharp and musical. Monsieur Poirot, you see love where there is only ambition. Poirot turned to her. Madame, you knew Gray in Paris, a charmer who wronged you. Did you seek vengeance? Her smile faded. I despised him, yes, but I kill for no man. Her words were cold, but her eyes flickered toward Mrs. Finch, who stood trembling. Poirot raised the glove, its peacock feather catching the light. This glove, found in the garden, points to Mrs. Finch, who admitted losing one. Madame Finch, you overheard Sir Geoffrey's threats to Lady Harrington. Did you act to protect her? Mrs. Finch sobbed, collapsing into a chair. I took the dagger to scare him, I swear. I dropped it in the garden when I heard voices. I didn't kill him! Her confession was raw, but Poirot saw a half-truth. She was involved, but not the hand that struck. He stepped to the centre of the room, his voice rising. The truth, mes amis, is a waltz of motives. Jonathan Gray betrayed Lord Harrington in Calcutta, stealing artefacts and breaking Lady Harrington's heart. But the codicil was no blackmail. It was gratitude for a debt long owed. Sir Geoffrey, however, knew of Grey's return and used it to pressure Lady Harrington into a business deal, threatening to expose her past love. The killer saw an opportunity, using the dagger and glove to cast suspicion on the widow, or Mrs. Finch. Poirot's eyes locked on Madame Isabelle Duval. Madame Duval, you are the choreographer of this crime. You knew Grey intimately, his charm and his cruelty. In Paris he humiliated you, and when you learned he was alive, perhaps contacting Lady Harrington, your jealousy ignited. You stole the dagger from the study, using your skill with locks, and took Mrs. Finch's glove to frame her or Evelyn. You lured Sir Geoffrey to the terrace, pretending to discuss business, and struck when he turned, his threats silenced forever. Isabelle's face drained of colour, her hands clenching. Absurd, monsieur. I was in the ballroom. Poirot shook his head. Non, madame. The maid saw a figure in a dark cloak, but your black dress, draped cleverly, could pass for one. The glove was your mistake. Mrs. Finch's, yes, but you wore it, leaving it to mislead. And Clara's sketch, inspired by your tales of Grey, confirms you knew he was near, stirring old wounds. The room gasped as Isabelle stood, her composure cracking. You have no proof, she spat. Poirot produced a small key, found in the music room's piano bench that morning. This key, madame, fits a locked drawer in your room, where I suspect we'll find letters from Grey, proving your connection. Inspector Reed nodded, and a constable moved toward Isabelle, who collapsed, sobbing. He ruined me in Paris. Geoffrey knew, laughing at my shame. I couldn't let him destroy Evelyn too. Lady Harrington swayed, clutching Clara's hand, as the police restrained Isabelle. Poirot addressed the room. The dance is over. Sir Geoffrey's greed and Isabelle's vengeance collided, fueled by a past that refused to stay buried. Jonathan Grey may still lurk, but his shadow no longer hides the truth. As the police led Isabelle away, the guests dispersed, their faces heavy with relief and sorrow. Poirot stood alone, the ballroom silent, his mind already turning to the next puzzle. If you've enjoyed this tale of deception, grab a cup of tea and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us. Comment below with your thoughts and let us know what mystery you'd like to unravel next.